Today we're talking about what are, in my opinion, the most interesting games of the second day of E3. We already had quite a few big hits yesterday, you can check out my first video for that. And today it continues a little bit slower, but there's still quite some nice stuff that's worth mentioning. As last time, we also have some honorable mentions beforehand. There's Maneater, a game where you control a shark, kind of GTA style. And that game looks really cool, but it doesn't really have any updated information compared to last year, so we're kind of still waiting for how the game will actually turn out. And well, we know what it's about now, the concept is still cool, but I want to see more. I was also asked about Dying Light 2, and I think that game looks very interesting, but I'm not quite sure how well it will be executed. The plans around it sound very ambitious, and I'm really not sure if that's gonna happen. And until we know a little bit more about how the game's planned to work out and how it actually looks like, I'm a bit skeptical. There was also various announcements regarding Final Fantasy, and for those of you who like Final Fantasy at all, there's definitely something in there. I personally am just not a fan of Final Fantasy, so those don't exactly get me personally hyped. But I still have 9 games today that I think are interesting in one way or another. The first one is Marvel Avengers. I'm generally very skeptical of any movie adaptation game, but this one actually seems like it might have potential. It's made by Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal? I don't know. With Square Enix as a publisher behind it, so it is a relatively high profile game in that regard. And it's gonna come out for pretty much any platform, PS4, Xbox One, PC, and even Google Stadia, so this seems to be a big project. The wonky thing about it is that they didn't go with the movie license Avengers basically, which is why all the Avengers look a little bit off to me personally, as somebody who's very used to the movie Avengers at this point and to their voices as well. You're going to play 5 of the Avengers, and that's most of what we know right now. How exactly the gameplay will work is not 100% clear yet. I have some hopes for this as a movie adaptation of some sorts, or maybe a bit of a comic adaptation as well. I don't know how you want to look at it here, but we'll see how it turns out. Then in spot number 8, we have Gods and Monsters. We don't know all too much about this game yet. It's made by Ubisoft Quebec, the people behind the last Assassin's Creed, I think, and it's a kind of Zelda-ish looking game, Breath of the Wild style kind of game, some sort of adventure game, but it's more focused around mythology, Greek gods, and in that regard it seems like something that could be fun at least. The visual style at least is very, very pleasing, and I have some hopes for this too. It's also going to come out for PC, Xbox, PS4 and Switch, so pretty much anyone gets to play it. And then in spot number 7, we have Watchdogs Legion. Now, I did not think that I would put a Watch Dogs game on my list because, I don't know, I never got into that, and after the, well, not so good reviews of the first one, I thought, okay, that series is kind of done for already. But this one definitely looks interesting, and not only in the trailer, but also in the gameplay. You're basically multiple people, among them, you know, your typical edgy teens and all that, but also a hacker grandma. And the job that you have in the game, or the missions that you have, are about recruiting more people for your hacker crew to fight the evil government, whatever, corporation stuff in the UK. But it's kind of cool that you get the option to just, I think, almost randomly recruit people, and you can also have people die, so you have an ever-changing roster of characters that you're playing with, and everyone can be an expert for different things. I don't know how exactly that will tie in with a story, and that's what I'm very curious about, and especially all the dialogue that's going to happen around it as well, which has to be adjusted depending on which character you pick. But if it's well done and not too streamlined, too linear, then I think this can be an interesting game. Also made by Ubisoft, but this time by the Toronto branch. In this case, it was really the trailer that convinced me, and I only watched that because I literally watched all trailers to know what each game is about, otherwise I would have completely missed this one. The next one, spot number 6, is Superliminal. This game gave me a Stanley Parable vibe right away. You have this riddle kind of playstyle where things are suddenly weird and realities are weaving into each other, and suddenly you hear an alarm and then you're in an area with massive alarm clocks and all that. So that looked very, very cool. It is by Pillow Castle Games, and I am absolutely looking forward to this one, just to see what it turns out to be. Even if it's just a short, cheap game, I'm here for that kind of stuff. I love Stanley Parable. In spot number 5, we have Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. What a name. This game is already interesting considering the fact that the last game of that series came out so long ago that I remember basically being a young teen when it came out. It's a vampire RPG. It has a lot of choices in the game as well, and a lot of stats that you can adjust, at least if it's anything like the first one. And honestly, even the gameplay trailers of it didn't look too bad. It's not something where I thought, wow, this is absolutely the game that I want to play right now, but it was enough to get my interest and enough to make me want to know more about the game. It's made by Hardsuit Labs, who have only ever made one other game before that I've never heard of that I think wasn't very successful, and the game will be coming out for PC, Xbox and PS4. And then we have spot number 4, but at this point, once again, the order becomes very flexible. It's not so much about which is the best one here, but those are the 4 that I think are very interesting and are games that I really want to check out. That spot goes to Evil Genius 2 World Domination. Really a thing with these long titles these days, is it? It's a real-time strategy game and basically a villain simulation where you build your villain base and you have to keep the spies from coming in and do evil things. And I think it looks super fun, at least as a building kind of game. I definitely want to try it out. I miss those kind of games in general, and yeah, there's not too many of them, but the ones that are there are usually done with a lot of passion. It's made by Rebellion Developments, who, among other things, also made the Sniper Elite series, so I have relatively high expectations for this one. Evil Genius 2, as far as I was able to find out, will only be released for PC. Spot number 3 goes to Warhammer Vermintide Versus. Initially, I thought this was more of a DLC, but after learning a little bit more about it, reading a bit more about it, this is very much a standalone game. And the game itself will be balanced separately from the main game or the main client, so that's not a concern. It's just going to be its own unique thing. The game itself is a 4v4 PvP as far as I understand it, which seems to have a side of PvE as well by having different waves attacking you, and the players are in the middle of that. It's made by Fatshark, who obviously made Warhammer Vermintide. They have also made a few other action-focused titles, but most of them aren't exactly very known. Vermintide Versus will apparently also be a PC release only, unfortunately. And now for the one that I think a lot of people are the most hyped for. There's a reason why it's in spot number 2 and not in spot number 1 though. And that is Baldur's Gate 3. What we've seen about this game so far is not very much, but what we've heard about the game surrounding it, and with the devs talking about it, sounds very, very exciting. The game is made by Larian Studios, the people behind Divinity, so they're no strangers to choice games, to role-playing games, to big concepts of games, essentially. And they are backed by Wizards of the Coast, and they're working very closely with them, the makers of Dungeons and Dragons, which it's based on. So that part sounds very good, and the fact that it's coming out for PC and Stadia sounds cool as well. I don't actually know how that works with Stadia. I don't really get the entire concept of Stadia as a whole yet, but as far as I know, that means you would be able to play it on other platforms as well, somehow through your browser, because you can use Chrome on those platforms and then you should be able to use it, or on your TV or whatever. So we'll see how that works. But the game itself is a role-playing game, and from what it sounds like, decisions will make a big impact on the gameplay in many regards, to an extent that most games don't allow for nowadays. The old Baldur's Gate games literally had hours of content that you may end up never seeing if you make a specific choice at a specific point. And that's not common these days anymore, so we'll see how far the devs take it, but they seem to be very passionate about the whole thing, so maybe they'll do it. And another question that's very big with this game right now is if it's going to be round-based or not, because for many people that's very off-putting, and the devs don't really want to give an answer to that yet, which makes me feel like it might be. Definitely a game that I want to keep an eye on at least, but we really need more information to make proper judgment about this. And that's why it's not number 1, but number 1 instead is Midnight Ghost Hunt. And who would have expected that? I don't know. Most certainly not me, because I didn't even know about this game before. But after learning about this game a little bit, I'm super excited. It's a very simple, straightforward concept, but we've already kind of seen what it's gonna play like, what it's gonna look like, and that just looks very cool. So the game is essentially like Gmod Prop Hunt, if you ever played that. You have ghosts, you have a team of 4 ghosts that hide in objects in the house, and the 4 ghost hunters, ghostbusters, have to take out these ghosts. And the quirk of the game, compared to a prop hunt, is that the ghosts can actually fight back. The game is made by Vaulted Sky Games, and they initially teased this basically without having a publisher yet, but Coffee Stain picked this up, and Coffee Stain is the company that made, for example, Goat Simulator and all these expansions. So I have big hopes for that. I think it's just a very simple game concept that isn't really used at the moment, and that makes for a different kind of PvP, and I really want to see those ghost fights. I think there's going to be some funny things with objects flying around everywhere and whatnot. So while the game that's not the biggest game that was announced here, it's one that already looks very polished, it looks very interesting, and there's a lot of passion going into it, I'd say. They specifically had a band or a musician or whatever make a song just for the trailer, just to match the trailer, and the song is actually really cool. I already like that a lot. And this is just one of those little things where you think, yeah, that sounds like the developers really put their heart into this. And yeah, if the game turns out to not be all too buggy, and according to all alpha tests that were done so far, it seems pretty polished already, I think this could be good for some fun. And that's all the interesting games, in my opinion, from day 2. Of course, it's personal opinion, yours may differ, there may be other games that you like better. Let me know what games you are really looking forward to in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to click the like button, and if you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell, it really helps me out. See you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.